And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Hello, I'm National Weather Service Meteorologist Peter Chan with your Alaska Aviation Weather Outlook on this Tuesday, April 1st, 2025. And to kind of set the stage of what we have coming up here for the midweek period, Wednesday and Thursday, we've had a series of low pressures since this weekend, along with fronts that have been pushing in from off the Bering, Chukchi Sea into the western, northern, and central mainland. So we have yet a third low pressure system that'll be passing up through the Bering Strait near Wales and Shishmaref as we go into early Wednesday morning. This is going to send another round of light to maybe moderate snow in through areas of the west coast, spreading inland into the interior, though it will not be quite as heavy as that second system that came inland on Monday night and Tuesday morning here across areas of the interior along the north side of the Alaska Range in and around the higher country there in Fairbanks. So nevertheless, we still have IFR conditions early Wednesday morning as that third system makes way right up here along the Bering Strait, pushing moisture in toward the east-northeast. IFR conditions across central interior, much of the west-southwest, lower southeast quadrant of the Bering in through the lower half of the Alaska Peninsula, back through the central Aleutians. Generally, VFR conditions continuing across the Panhandle Wednesday morning, back across the northern Gulf Coast through Prince William Sound, Cook Inlet for Wednesday afternoon. Still VFR conditions along the Gulf Coast and in southern mainland, south of the Alaska Range, diminishing pockets of IFR up there around the White Mountains there outside northeast of Fairbanks. South side, though, of the Brooks Range could see a band of IFR conditions, and then also down here toward Bristol Bay and down through the lower southeast area of the Bering, eastern half, the Aleutians, the Alaska Peninsula. So what is going to happen is by Thursday, there's going to be a stronger low pressure with a broad circulation begin to come up out of the North Pacific. That's going to have impact here across the eastern Aleutians, actually bringing snow and wind. Could be some heavy snowfall with strong gale force winds gusting to lower and storm force winds. So that's something to watch for as we head into Thursday. So here we have that taking shape. Thursday morning, remnant moisture in the north and along the Alaska Range causing areas of IFR through the interior and on up toward areas of the North Slope, eastern Arctic coast. But then here comes that hint of that system and moisture beginning to stream northward from the North Pacific low. And on the backside of that in the colder air, there is going to be some moderate to heavy snowfall along with blowing snow and strong winds there in the eastern Aleutians. So stay tuned to later potential for any sort of advisories or warnings. Meanwhile, the Panhandle stays dry with VFR conditions along most of the northern northeastern Gulf Coast. And on Thursday afternoon, we can see that system now becoming dominant and taking shape with the low down here in the North Pacific. Brisk northerly winds coming across the eastern Aleutians with heavier snowfall. Meanwhile, milder air trying to come northward. We have a frontal boundary that's going to be pushing up into the lower Gulf. That's why we have IFR conditions here. It's going to also be windy along this broad circulation that's like this. So get ready, because this is the weather system that's going to be pushing northeastward as we go into the end of the week and over the weekend. It's going to keep precipitation and gusty winds along the Gulf Coast, Alaska Peninsula into the eastern Aleutians, and some of that moisture is going to ride up along the southwest coast all the way up into the west coast and be in the form of snow, maybe even some mixed precipitation around Kuskokwim Bay as we get into Friday. So stay tuned to later forecasts, because this will be an active weather pattern for that, especially the southern portion of the state. But even so, some of that moisture is going to lift northward into the interior over the weekend. In the meantime, Wednesday, we're looking at VFR conditions in the morning. Anatuvik Pass there in the east central Brooks Range becoming IFR, though, as some of that moisture lifts up along the south slopes of the Brooks Range. Same thing, Adigan Pass, VFR early becoming IFR. Off to the south and west, we expect period of IFR conditions in the morning. Lake Clark and Merrill along the west arm of the Alaska Range trying to become VFR in the afternoon and evening. Same thing, Rainy Pass, IFR early in the day, Wednesday becoming VFR. Windy Pass may see IFR conditions there to start the day, but then trying to become MVFR. And as we go through Isabel Pass, generally MVFR conditions are expected to prevail Wednesday, and further east, Mentasta, dry enough conditions, VFR conditions there. And as we drop down through the Copper River Basin, MVFR conditions in the morning giving way to VFR conditions. And generally it's looking like Portage Pass along the northern northeastern Gulf Coast into the Panhandle will enjoy VFR conditions during the day Wednesday. Now, we can see, too, that something that has been absent for a while, because it's been quite cold across the mainland, at least the temperatures are below freezing and aloft. But because of this system that's going to be coming out of the North Pacific, we find higher, there's some ridging, we find higher freezing levels aloft above 8,000 feet just southwest of the Gulf and south of Kodiak Island. And it's allowed a little warmer air aloft to come northward. And this will be the case as that low takes shape and comes up out of the North Pacific here for the end of the week. Now, with the current scenario, we have the third low that is part of a series now coming up into the Bering Strait across the northern Seward Peninsula early Wednesday morning, and that push of lower cloud cover, snow, reduced visibility, working its way into areas of the interior along the middle Yukon above 3,000 feet, the south slopes here of areas of the Brooks Range. Also, we have some moisture up toward Kodiak Island and outside of Cook Inlet. As we get down there near and southeast of Kodiak Island, icing is potentially possible there above 8,000 feet in some of those moisture-laden clouds. And then back out here to the southwest, as we get out into the central eastern Aleutians, the backside of this, there's colder air being drawn down on north wind, building north winds as this low begins to lift out of the North Pacific up south of the Alaska Peninsula. That is going to eventually increase moisture and northerly winds across the eastern Aleutians and allow for that accumulating snow and blowing snow. So conditions are going to really deteriorate around that area, including Dutch Harbor on Alaska. So kind of a neat feature here. This is a classic example. We have the ridging over the North Pacific up into the Gulf. And notice, this is what we call cyclonic curvature, because when you have this anticyclonic curvature, because you have this high pressure ridge and the kind of makes this arc. And behind me, we have the backside of this trough out here in through the Aleutians with a wind max of 145 knots, just to the west-southwest of Shimia and Attu. But this feature here shows what we call a coupled jet structure, and that there's usually always a stronger surface low located in the region where these two features are kind of briefly separated. And it's down below in the screen, but that's where that low will be coming from. Now at mid-levels, with that system coming in early Wednesday morning, there are some stronger winds passing between the Alaska Range on south side of the Brooks Range, central Yukon Valley at 9,000 feet or 700 millibars, winds in excess of 50 knots, but a broad swath of mid-level westerly winds across the central mainland. Then back out here toward the Aleutians, notice the hint of that low circulation beginning to emerge at the bottom, below the bottom of your screen. You have these northeast northerly winds starting to show up in the central Aleutians and increasing 35 to 45 knots. That feature is going to shift and be lying in this region here as we head into Thursday, Friday, early Saturday. So stay tuned to more active weather along areas of the west-southwest coast, the eastern half of the Aleutians, up into the Alaska Peninsula along the especially western Gulf as we get here toward the end of the week. And turbulence threat on Wednesday will be primarily across the interior and along the west coast, even back towards St. Lawrence Island, surface to 4,000 feet. And then another pocket, again, as those northeast winds begin to strengthen across the central Aleutians, you could see some moderate turbulence on Wednesday, surface to 3,000 feet.